and this is a little bit of a emergency kind of a abbreviated update. So there's a bunch of things that are going on right now that I think it's really, really important that everybody is aware of. So you may have heard of something called the looking glass technology. Now, what you might not know is how this actually works. So the way this used to work, I should say, is that there was coven leaders. Now, I don't know the exact number, but let's say 9 out of 10 of them, right? There's 10 coven leaders and they all get this vision, and it's kind of like the Minority Report, you know, in the pre-crime division with Tom Cruise. And they all get a vision, and whatever that vision is, if 9 out of 10 of them have the same vision, then that has like a 95% rate of that actually happening. So back in the day, they had a vision of what was going to happen when there was this massive shift in the world. Now, in their vision, what they came up with was a plan back in the 70s based on the looking glass technology. And in this vision, 90% of the population was eliminated. They were left in a utopia where they were in charge, and the world became a very different place because all the survivors, we were essentially slaves. This was the plan. This is also the plan you'll often hear referenced when they say, trust the plan. Now, that plan, believe it or not, is actually what was in place for a long time. It was presented as a way to save humanity. So what happened was they had until 2012 to implement this plan. But in 2012, they failed. They weren't able to bring the world under one world government. Now, parts of this plan, they tried to execute as late as this week. Because they failed in 2012, they're continuing to try to reproduce the results of the vision where they win. For example, they saw that there would be a massive outbreak of disease. There'd be a pandemic. So they're creating a pandemic. They saw that there would be a famine. So right now, they're actively cutting off the water in places like Mexico to cause food shortages around the world. And this is happening everywhere. They also saw various pieces fall into place. Now, one of the things they saw was something you may have heard about, is where the actual continents restructure and there's this whole change in where the water is. It's why the Chinese built all these ghost cities right on high ground inland, because they were preparing for this plan they put in place to transfer power from the dragon families of the West, the Black Dragons headed up by George H.W. Bush, to the dragon families of the East, or the Chinese elders, which is why so much of our American culture is basically owned by the Chinese. It's the reason why 80% of all of our imports come in from China. It's to give power over peacefully to them. And that's what they wanted us to do. Now, this is something we clearly have to fight, and in some levels, President Trump is fighting. And not all of his actual information is entirely accurate. But this is a very important thing to remember, because a lot of generals out there, and a lot of people in governments out there, are now realizing that this is the case, that they've been part of a plan, such as the global currency reset was part of the plan, that every country in the world has signed off on, based on the predictive mapping accuracy of the looking glass technology. And 9 out of 10 of them saw the same thing, where we'd be enslaved, a majority of the population would be killed off, there'd be a famine, and you'd have the restructuring of all these different things, right? So Monday, because they failed to do this, they continue to try to repeat this so they can recreate the events where they win. So on Monday, they tried to set off nuclear detonations in the tectonic plates all over the world. But here's what the problem is. It's not the 9 out of 10 that we need to concern ourselves with. It's what was in the 10th vision, because that's the timeline that we're in now. Now, in this, what we know for a fact is that Kimberly Ann Gogan was identified, because in 2012, these old contracts that actually held us all hostage, they expired. So humanity took back control. So they identified the person with genetic makeup with the most human DNA, which is Kimberly Ann Gogan. And she has 99.8% bioidentical genetics to the mitochondrion Eve. Also identified, you can research it in the haplo-K group. Now, this is science. This is just the way it is. So she was identified, and that allowed her to open up the quantum mapping system. And the quantum mapping system is what controls many, many aspects of our culture, but definitely all the electronic things, and the financial system, the intelligence and military systems. And this is the way that we were held hostage for many, many years. Things were used against us like frequencies and messaging and war constantly being used against us. So in 9 out of 10 of these predictive analysis from these Coven leaders for the Looking Glass technology, they identified a version of the world that they expected to happen where they won. And we have passed the timeline for all of those. So now the question is, what was in the 10th version of the Looking Glass? Well, in the 10th version, there's some things I know they saw because they identified Kimberly Ann Gogan with the facial recognition technology because they saw her face in the Looking Glass and they identified her when she was very young. And we can safely predict they probably saw a lot of us. And in this, what we noticed lately is they are working diligently. They had worked to sabotage us from launching the United News Channel. Now, I want to map some things out because this is very, very important. There are 5 things that need to happen all at once. Now, we need to have security for the people. We actually have to have law enforcement because we have a lot of laws and a lot of legislators who are all part of the deep state, and they make laws that never get enforced. So what good is it? More laws just means more restrictions on us. And right now they have laws to ban all types of things. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. They're taking away our medical freedom. All of this is happening right now. So if they're doing that, what good are laws if they are never enforced? Because the same group watched as they committed treason against President Trump, falsely bringing up claims, constantly attacking him, completely stagnating our entire society, and not one person has come up for punishment in any way. So clearly the laws don't apply to everyone. So with that being said, these things need to change. There has to be law enforcement. So very recently, we announced that Life Force has launched its own law enforcement. Now this enforcement division, the enforcement unit, has already had some great success. As anybody who is a member of the Black Sun should know by now, that the entire dark nobility that was queued up to take over the world came together for their Harvest Moon meeting, which is coming up tomorrow, the end of that. When they all came together, they're all gone now, eliminated, because they're irreparable humans. Because in all their planning, the best they could come up with was to kill off 90% of the population. And anybody who wants to kill off 90% of the population, you can't be here on this planet with us, because we are trying to save and change the world, empower people, and they're trying to do the opposite. So anyone going along with that agenda who doesn't know that that happened, your entire dark nobility has been eliminated in the same day. Now, the next part, so you need enforcement. So you need something to back up. So we have that. The next thing is you need the financial system to actually be fair. So when I transfer money into my account, there should be money there. They shouldn't be allowed to take it and decide what they want to do with it. Under the global currency reset plan, what they had it structured to do was that they do away with all hard currency. Now, the reason why that's dangerous is because that would make all currency digital, and ultimately every single financial transaction would be controlled by the banks. Now, the reason why that's very, very, very dangerous is because that is your new world order. That brings in one government under the banking system and ultimately makes finances God. So that can't happen. So Kimberly Ann Gogan has implemented the key integrated monetary system. And the reason why that's important, the reason why she did it that way, is so nobody can deny that every single bank in the world is using the KIMS system, because they refuse to acknowledge her existence. But that's a fact. And you can bring that to Russell J. Gould and Charlie Ward and anyone else who wants to challenge it, because that is the way it is. Now, you also needed to make sure that the intelligence was available to people, so you have the key intelligence and military system, also KIMS. Very important to note these things. Now, that being said, so you have law enforcement. Now, the banking system has been completely restructured. They cannot bring money in unless they cooperate with Kim. And right now, there is all types of funds that go to the people that they will not allow come to the people. And because of that, Kim will not allow them to have a dime. And many of their accounts have been completely wiped out. And they keep trying to implement blockchain technology through the FedCoin. And the blockchain technology does about 150,000 transactions per second, which sounds fast if you didn't know that in America alone, we do about 75 billion transactions per second, and that the actual current system working processes about 150 billion transactions per second. So there's no way to implement the FedCoin or a blockchain system without crashing the economy. So we have to restore that. The next part is you need to have education and you need to have media that actually change so that people understand what's happened and what's possible. So because the financial system is currently is already renovated, and now just a few subtle changes here and there, but we already have evidence that will actually provide where we've transferred money directly into the central bank in Mexico and they have acknowledged it, and we have other governments and banks that are still doing the same. But that takes some time because they're catching on and they're used to being controlled a different way. So we need at the same time to launch an educational and media platform. So the United News is going to be exactly that. We are united. It'll be a network that goes around the world. And we've already implemented and set up branches all over the world that are already starting to grab the real story. So we know for a fact that we need to get that story out to you, because that's a key component. Because the number one weapon of the people is that information is readily available to all of us. And we need the real story. Now, we're going to give you real evidence and real news, and we're going to get it directly from the ground, from real people, and that is already happening. We just had a big meeting with the group in Europe, and they'll have a fully functioning channel and a fully functioning show right away. We're going to put out short updates and longer updates and full news, and we've done all this. Now, in the meantime, we've been hacked severely, and we had a lot of the things that we paid for, the software and things like that, got set up, and we had to make adjustments and make new things. So we are in a very, very serious need right now to launch. We know it because we are on the cusp of a big disaster or a big victory. And I think it's essential right now for the people to stand together so we can have a big victory. Now, here is what's happening. We had a lot of things that we were being dragged through that has taken us this long to launch. And a lot of issues that shouldn't have been issues that became issues just from negligence, just from people trying to tell us bad information and give us poor reports. So where we're at now is we had our system hacked. That's why we couldn't keep the website up. That's been corrected. We had the app fully developed so that we can launch that, and that'll be its own version of news, plus will end up being almost like its own version of YouTube, so that people who have real information can actually put it out. Now, we have that all built. Now, we had to change some other things that are going to be a surprise. And over the next few days, I need you to watch very carefully because you're going to see a lot of new information come out, and the United News channel will launch very, very shortly. I can't give you the exact date, and there are going to be some changes. So you got to pay attention to the Speak Project on YouTube, and you'll see what's coming out.